Hello and welcome back to a super exciting game. This is episode 6, I believe, of the Take the Initiative playlists. And today I am playing a Palpatine deck, a blue Palpatine. And then you might think to yourself, why is that exciting? Sabine versus Palpatine, shouldn't that be very one-sided? But actually, I think you are able to build Palpatine, so he actually can do very well into aggro. The fact that he deploys on 8 is of course a very negative part in that matchup, but he has some other tools that really can help. So first of all, let's just take a look at the changes I made to the list. Compared to last game, I just put in an extra Darksaber and removed a Medal Ceremony. And I actually added the Chaos of War to the sideboard. That's a card that you have to play out of aspect, so it's going to cost you 5. But in that late stage of the game where you just need a top deck to finish the game, if you draw a 4 cost I believe in that costs 3, or a Chaos of War that costs 5, it probably doesn't matter. Maybe you just need 3 or 4 damage to close out the game. And when you play against control decks, they maybe have a lot of cards in their hand. So in order to fit that card, let me see what I took out. Yes, it looks like I took out a Spec Force soldier from the sideboard. So now we just play 2 in the main and none in the side. Maybe we need more in case we're facing a very heavy Sentinel deck, but that's the way it is for this game at least. So now to the more interesting part. I don't have the list that my opponent used for this game, but blue Palpatine is something I've played a lot, both in the end of set 1 and in the beginning of set 2. I think it was one of the first decks that I played with new cards, and this is my current version of the deck. And there are some things to look at here. First of all, we can just briefly look at new cards that help Palpatine out. Of course, Dr. Pershing and the Client are great, as they were in Krennic. They are also great in Palpatine. And then we see 2 other cheap cards here. We have Salacious Crumb. He is good because he can let you heal more, and especially together with Colonel Yularen. And with Palpatine, we can just sacrifice him. He's like a good unit to use Palpatine's ability on to draw a card and deal 1 damage if we need to damage something to steal it or just to finish something off. Then we have Cobb Vanth. He's a kind of slow unit because you need an extra action to play the unit for free that you get from his when defeated effect. But I think he fits pretty well into Palpatine, since we have a lot of nice 2-drops we would like to see even in the late game, like Dr. Pershing, Colonel Yularen, Piet. Pretty much all of them are great, not only on the first turn of the game, but also later in the game. And Cobb Vanth, notably, is an official. The Client is also an official. And that brings us to the reason why I think blue Palpatine has a pretty good shot against aggro. The first reason is Emperor's Royal Guard. That card is just so good against aggro, being able to put a 3/5 Sentinel in the second turn of the game that can really disrupt our opponent's early game plan. And then the second card is Vigilance. Vigilance is a card that rose in popularity, I would say, as hard control decks rose, but people also understood that it's not necessarily just good for milling your opponent, it's also good against stopping aggro. Being able to take out one of their units and heal 5 can really slow them down enough so you can get to your Palpatine deploy and stabilize. So this deck really does have a lot of healing with Colonel Yularen, Salacious Crumb, the Client, Make an Opening, and Vigilance. And actually Reinforcement Walker as well can be good, just to get out of 4 costs, I believe, in range. But there is one more card that I think is quite special, that also makes this deck good against aggro, and that is Escort Skiff. So when you play against aggro, you don't necessarily want to ramp on 3 resources. Mostly when you play Palpatine, you would like to play Resupply or Emperor's Royal Guard then, But here you would rather have Emperor's Royal Guard or Cobb Vanth. Sorry, I meant to say Super Laser Technician earlier. You would rather play Emperor's Royal Guard or Cobb Vanth, so you can use Escort Skiff on 4 resources and ambush and get a 2-for-1 against aggro. That's just amazing. And then following that up with a Overwhelming Barrage on a 4-attack unit, being able to, let's say, take out 2 space units, that can actually just secure you the board so early, which is amazing. So I think I've ranted enough about how I think Blue Palpatine actually is pretty cool of a deck. So I think we should just go straight into the game. So we're doing the high roll here, and luckily we get the best die result. And our opening hand here is not the best. R2 being our only turn on play and not having anything else to follow it up with, that's pretty bad. So I would say that's a very easy mulligan choice. And here we have Sabine, which is much better. I would say this resourcing decision is not the easiest. R2 can be nice to kind of smooth out our curve, but Medal Ceremony can also be nice just to kind of get out of range from those trades. Being able to give Sabine 4 life instead of 3 can matter a lot. And now we got another Sabine, which is in this case not that good, but if our opponent would, let's say, use Power of the Dark Side, then it could be nice to play Sabine and R2. So here we're just going to see a Super Laser Technician. I would say not that good of a play from our opponent, but the ramp might pay off later. Fighters for Freedom is a card I'm not that sure about anymore, because the list already has a lot of 3-drops, and now we introduced 3 Cassians to the list. So the fighters are maybe not that necessarily. They are one of the cards I'm looking to cut, but they are good together with U-Wing. If you're playing against a deck you know is going to take a longer time to kill, then getting in U-Wing from the sideboard and playing, let's say, Fighters for Freedom and 2 A-Wings can be an amazing play for 7 resources. So here we're going to see Colonel Yularen on the board. I decide to attack with Wing Leader, so he can't use Palpatine to sacrifice that Super Laser Technician and just kill off the Wing Leader before it gets to attack. And now our opponent got the ramp and has 3 resources, so sadly for us we're gonna see Emperor's Royal Guard hitting the board. The good thing now is that our opponent is out of resources and we can safely play Sabine with a Darksaber. So that's pretty good now. Sabine hits for 6, killing that Royal Guard and giving an experience to our Sabine unit. So now she will hit for 6, so that's pretty great. Also, don't forget that Sabine leader has a non-attack as well, dealing 1 damage to the base. So that was why I was pinging there. Drawing Force Calls, I believe in here, is just amazing. So we know we're gonna have that top end. Seeing it in the opening hand is always difficult. In some matchups you maybe have to actually keep it, but here we're just happy to draw it a little bit later. So now we have 5 resources. We could just play like Wing Leader to buff Sabine even more, but I decide to kind of not cut my losses, but get that ECL value now, because it's something that you, if you wait too long, maybe never get a really good chance to use ECL. So now I just thought it would be good to get rid of Colonel Yularen, deal 2 damage on the base, and make our opponent discard a card as well. Especially now, since our opponent has spent all of their resources, and we know we are going to get 8 more damage on the base with our board. So Poe is just amazing. I'm actually starting to like Wrecker more and more as well. So I'm thinking of maybe playing 3 in the main. As you saw before this game, I only had 2. But we're gonna attack with our units, bring our opponent up to 25 damage. And with a Foracos in hand and this board, we know this is pretty much GG. So our opponent has a Vader. Of course, if they would get the Sentinel here, they could maybe stabilize a little bit. They don't know the fact that we have 4 costs, so even though they would have found the Sentinel, it would have been over. So, game 1, really quick. As you can see, there's still a lot left of the video, so prepare yourself for 2 little bit more grindy games. So here we can see sideboarding, taking out the Bright Hopes, and I think I should remove Fang Fighter as well. I'm leaving in the U-Wings and all 3 Wreckers and the Chaos of War. And then I'm considering removing... Yeah, I think I'm just taking all the Medal Ceremonies. Medal Ceremony is a card I'm not sure on. I think it's a good card, but I'm not sure whether it's good against aggro, where you just need to kind of have a little bit more damage than your opponent in order to win the race, or if it's good against control to kind of put your units out of good range for trades or removal. Right now I'm thinking it's more the first one. So here I'm siding it out to rather get in U-Wings and so forth, since our deck already is very low curve and I know this game can drag out. But that's not necessarily the right decision. Maybe I should leave them in to make my deck even faster and just win before our opponent gets to play Vigilance and heal for 5 and so forth. Yeah. Here I am deciding to resource Sabine and rather play the Battlefield Marine. I don't know when one is better than the other. Of course, Sabine can take out a shield and do a trade, or deal 1 damage to a unit that just has 1 life and don't take any damage back. But here, Battlefield Marine is nice because he can't get a free attack in with Colonel Yularen. So if he would want to attack in, Colonel Yularen would die. Yeah, so I guess playing the Marine here was decent. Really happy to see Super Laser Technician again and not a Royal Guard. So we are able now to either take out Colonel Yularen, which would probably be smart in case they top deck a Royal Guard next turn, and that official trait is really important to give Sentinel. But instead I decide to just push damage to the base and attack with the Fleet Lieutenant. I would say a good thing about this is that we can try to keep initiative, because now we've attacked and spent all of our resources, so we only have the ping action left, which we can sacrifice for getting the initiative back. So now our opponent of course has to think if they want to attack with Yularen or just take the initiative here. I said our hand is pretty good. A Darksaber would be nice to see, but K2 is amazing, and Cassin is nice just to have as a resource, being able to smuggle him for later. So 4 resources, we could see a takedown for instance, but our opponent decides to draw a card with Palpatine's ability, sacrificing the Super Laser Technician. And the ramping against aggro, I would say, is kind of mixed. Sometimes it can be good if it lets you come to those really pivotal cards earlier, like Vigilance. But sometimes you kind of would rather put units on the board. But here our opponent had a pretty decent play with make an opening as well to take out our Marine. And I just play K2 on the board. We still have Energy Commercial Lab up, which is really good, especially with Poe in hand. And now we draw a Darksaber and a 4 cost, so, or maybe we had that already. So our hand and board looks pretty nice. The thing is, our opponent is now on 6 resources and only on 8 damage. And now with another ramp card, that means we'll see Palpatine deploying next turn. And that can be, of course, bad if they steal K2, but also just putting that 4-10 on the board, that might be able to just start actually killing us as well. So now we're gonna see a takedown on Sabine. I decided to kill the Super Laser Tech with my K2 because we only lost 1 damage because of the overwhelm, and then our opponent couldn't use Palpatine's ability to kill the Fleet Lieutenant. So I guess now we got an attack there, but since we killed the Super Laser Tech, they had enough resources to play takedown. So maybe it would have been better if we had just ignored that Super Laser Technician and just, for instance, hit base first with the Fleet Lieutenant. Playing Poe on an empty board as well is pretty nice. It's a threat that our opponent has to respect. And now drawing another Poe, it's kind of a difficult resource decision because we could go up to 6 resources here, letting us, for instance, play Darksaber and the A-Wing. But all of our other cards are so good, so I don't really want to be resourcing any of those. And hence, I'm thinking just to resource the A-Wing and keep all of my more expensive, valuable cards. Okay, here we're faced with a very difficult action. They deployed, taking our K2. And now we have a Fleet Lieutenant that can easily be killed, and a Poe that has a lot of power and that we probably should kind of get value out of. If our opponent has Sentinel or Rival's Fall. I don't think they play Vanquish, but even the Vanquish would work. So here I decide to just attack and actually discarding the Darksaber to put 2 more damage on the base. And that's because right now I'm thinking we have one line of play here that can put enough damage, and that's pinging this turn and next turn. So that's going to be 24. And then 4 damage from for a cause is going to be 28. And then Energy Commercial Lab with Poe is going to be 2 more damage. So 30. So that's the line I'm kind of going for right now, because I know they're gonna kill Fleet Lieutenant regardless, and I can't really play another Poe on the board right now because of the unique rule, and I'm only on 6 resources, so I'm not gonna be able to U-wing as well. So probably for a cause is the only good play I have this turn, and then hopefully next turn I can just use Energy Commercial Lab and get those last 2 damage in. But we're playing against Blue Palp, and they probably have some healing cards, so it's always a risk. Maybe it's just better for us to smuggle in Cassian. I think we have a Cassian resourced, but we're gonna have to see first what our opponent decides to do. this is a very kind of tight situation or pivotal moment where our opponent might be able to take the game back. And they having 8 resources means they can probably play some significant cards there as well. So they could attack with K2. That could be 6 damage to the base. Or they could even attack base with Palpatine just to draw a card with K2 and deal that 1 damage to the Fleet Lieutenant. That could be good if they really need to dig for healing cards. But they decide to attack with K2 and use the when defeated effect for damage as well. And here I'm pinging, kind of not to give my opponent information and to, as I said, come closer to that win condition with ECLing Poe. So here I'm faced in a difficult situation. I'm not thinking about it too much, so I just play for a cause. I think it maybe could have been better to play either Cassian from our resources or just play Poe, and that way force our opponent to do the trade. Because now he got to attack with 6 damage to our base, and that means we're almost in killing range. If we're pinging now, we're on 17, and then 1 more for attack, that's 21, and then we're just 1 attack away. And that's kind of something you need to think about while playing Sabine, is that, yeah, you might have a plan to getting enough damage, but you also need the actions, so you have to make sure that your opponent can't just kill you in the meantime. So here I'm pinging, and I know if our opponent doesn't heal right now, it's game over, because we can ECL Poe, discard a card to deal 2 damage. So that's the line I'm going for, hoping that he doesn't have a healing card. And again, our opponent takes their time to think about their actions here. But we are going to see a Vigilance. That's very rough. Probably the most healing they could do in one action. So instead of playing Poe, I'm just hoping for the best with Ewing. And here we are faced with a very difficult decision. There are so many options, so many units we could play. But the problem is Wrecker is the only one with 7 power, so the only one that could win us the game in 1 action next turn. But he costs 6. So that means I'm thinking, if I play Wrecker, our opponent has 3 resources left. They only need a make an opening or a Power of the Dark Side to actually kill Wrecker. So I'm also highly considering Fighters for Freedom here to get 2 more damage in if I play 2 more red units. Or I could play, let's say, 2/2 costs and a Wing Leader, kind of to force our opponent to respect that. But the problem is that I mentioned before is that our opponent is able to now put us on 21 damage. And even if we get the initiative after that, we can't kill our opponent in 1 action left. And I don't think we play any Sentinels in the deck, no Echo-based defenders. So I think the only line I'm seeing here for us to win is for me to play Wrecker and hope that they don't have a way to get rid of it. Because if I play those 3 units, our opponent will just attack base, we get initiative, and then we can't get rid of Palpatine in any way, right? We don't have exhaust effects, and maybe if we would buff, let's say, a Battlefield Marine with Wing Leader, we could top deck a Heroic Sacrifice and then hitting for 7 that way, but that's also going to be super rough. So here I am just hoping for the best and using Wrecker's when play the ability just to get rid of that shield. Not that it matters that much anymore. And now we just have to cross our fingers. But of course our opponent has Power of the Dark Side, so it doesn't look good, and that top deck can't really do anything to save us, and that's game. So maybe playing Ewing there was actually not that good. Maybe Cassian could have been better. I mean, Power of the Dark Side could still just get rid of that, so I don't think we really had any outs of that situation if we'd play our cards a bit differently. But here you can at least see how good Vigilance is. Just healing 5 can really change the course of a game. Alright, so going into game 3, we have a pretty interesting hand. We have two 2-costs that are in space and ground, and 2 3-costs that are in space and ground. So here I'm just hoping for the best and resourcing my ground cards, and just hoping that our opponent won't have that many space cards and we can kind of really get an advantage that way. I would say it's a gamble, but in general space is more scarce than ground, so I'm going for it. And we don't really need 2 Darksabers, so I just resource that. And here I actually decide to play red 3 first, because getting 1 damage in with the Y-Wing is not that much to lose, because we know our opponent's probably going to take the 2 on the Colonel Yularen. So now I can get 1 more damage with the red 3 giving raid. And here we are very sad to see that our opponent has finally gotten himself a good 3-cost card and not Super Laser Technician as we saw the previous 2 games. Even though the ramp kind of worked, but Emperor's Royal Guard is really going to be hard to deal with. And now I think in this turn we're going to see me again making the mistake of not counting buffs right. If you watched the previous Krennic game, there I totally forgot that Vader got more damage from Krennic being Krennic giving the damage buff. And here again I totally forgot that red 3 would give K2 a buff if I would just use him with ECL. So I think that would be the optimal play right here, just to ECL into Emperor's Royal Guard and stop that 3 damage. But right now I'm not considering that in my thinking, so I'm thinking I'll just stall a little bit with Sabine and then rather deploy her, maybe put the Darksaber on her. So now our opponent gets to attack with both their ground units and actually put a lot of damage on our base. And I mean, it doesn't really matter if we are faster, but as you saw in the previous game, sometimes damage really matters because it's gonna limit your actions. So if I would have less damage on the base from that previous game, then Ewing putting 3 units on the board maybe would have won me the game. But now I finally realized that red 3 gives K2 a buff, so I'm going for that play rather than the Darksaber. And I think it's still not the worst play. It would have been better if I'd used it earlier to get rid of the 3 damage that we took. And now, since they don't have any more units left, attacking with the Y-Wing is actually much better, because now they have to decide do they want 2 damage on the base or that Sentinel to die. But I decided not to attack in with red 3 because it still has 2 power, so if they decide to attack in with the Sentinel, what's it called again? The surveillance craft or something like that, then they'll still trade. But we're gonna see me being punished quite quickly here, and it's probably a card I should have played around, considering I've played a lot of Palp and Krennic myself. So we're gonna see Overwhelming Barrage here for 5, and that's gonna be enough to take out both K2 and Sabine, which really sucks because they would have been able to deal a lot of damage this turn. There's not that many great plays that Palpatine can do with 5 resources. So I decide to do the 3 damage of the when defeated effect, and now I kind of left with the awkward decision, because if I play the A-Wing here, then my opponent is probably just going to attack into the A-Wing and then surviving with 3 damage. So that's not that good. If I attack with red 3 first, they would probably go 5 to base, and then I guess we could play A-Wing after and play another red 3, which could have been a pretty nice play, but here I think I just decide to play Cassian. That way I'm at least getting 3 damage to the base this turn. But maybe it would have been better to get 2 space units there. And just attack in with red 3 first to kind of make our opponent, I guess our opponent wouldn't necessarily just go 5 to base. Maybe they would pass and see what we play first, because we hadn't spent any resources. So that's also something you should consider, is that if you're playing aggro and you haven't played any card yet, there's no reason for our opponent to just forcibly continue and doing actions. They could just pass and wait and see, because if we then claim, that's pretty good for them, right? They're probably not scared of us just taking the initiative. So at least we get 1 more damage in from Cassian with the red 3, and now our opponent takes the initiative, and I decide to just finish off that space unit. So this game is possibly going to be a lot more tight than it would have to be if I just had cleared that spaceship. So that's something to consider, playing against command villainy. Maybe clear the board so they can't Overwhelming Barrage. Okay, so now we have 6 resources. We have used the energy conversion lab, so Wrecker is not going to be as good as it could be. But we're going to play an A-Wing. Sadly, our opponent matches that with a Sentinel in space of their own. And now us just being on 4 resources can't smuggle in that Cassian we got, but I guess we're just going to have to play red 3 and kind of hope for the best. We could use Heroic Sacrifice to draw a card. We could also play Spec Force Soldier just to put a 2/2 on the board, but I'm thinking maybe we need those effects to remove Sentinel or to push damage to actually win this game. So I decided not to use them. Now we're up to 7 resources, so we can play Wrecker and the 1 cost. Our opponent has a pretty good action here of just killing the A-Wing, having their Sentinel survive with 1 damage. So that's probably what they're going to do. That's kind of the negative part of both the A-Wing and the Y-Wing, is that our opponent, if they have a 3/2 in space, can just really get those favorable trades. So I maybe should consider playing some more X-Wings, but I like the fact that they can essentially hit for 3, and they're especially good when buffed with the Wing Leader. So our opponent showed us he had a retainer here, Gamorrean retainer, but he decides to play something else instead, and that's gonna be a Rival's Fall. And that's actually very, very good for us now, because we have a Wrecker that can hit the base for 7. So them not having that Rival's Fall is kind of a little bit of a security that he might be able to get an attack. But our opponent is on 7 resources, and now putting 1 damage on Wrecker means he can steal Wrecker. And luckily we kept that heroic sacrifice. I think without that card we would probably just lose this game, because now we can deal 9 to the base and defeat Wrecker, so our opponent can't steal him. And that's probably going to matter a lot. Our opponent did a, I think, miscalculation there, playing a Avenger when they're only on 8 resources. And I guess if our opponent had, let's say, a Vigilance right now, being able to take out the Spec Force Soldier and heal 5, then we would definitely lose this game. So here I'm just smuggling in the Cassian to hopefully get 3 more damage in. And luckily that Royal Guard doesn't have Sentinel right now, so we do. And then our opponent deploys Palpatine. That means now the guard has Sentinel, and if he wants he can kill Cassian with the on-attack effect from Emperor Palpatine. Here I actually decided to claim, because our opponent has 2 resources left. I know the only card that can heal him is currently Lauren, and if we would let our opponent have the initiative here, they maybe could draw a healing card like Vigilance. And I know I only have 3 non-heroism cards in the deck, and 2 of those are in my resources, being Darksabers. So I just want the initiative here so I can play for a cause I believe in, and very most probably get that 4 damage. Yeah, so here I just drew my cards a little bit too early, and our opponent decides to play the retainer and sacrifice it with Palpatine. But luckily we still have the initiative, so we're going to play for a cause and reveal 1, 2, 3 and 4 heroism cards. So that was a very, very close game again, thanks to me not respecting Overwhelming Barrage. Luckily we got the win, so right now we are 4 wins and 2 losses in total. So if we are able to win the next 2 games, then possibly we're going to get into the top cut. That would be really fun. And yeah, let me know if you think I should stick with Sabine. I probably will, because I think she's one of the fastest aggro decks. Maybe Kylo Ren or Lando can kind of match her. Lando with Cunning to kind of disrupt us while buffing himself, and Kylo Ren with just putting so many 1 costs on the board and having that swing in for 5 on the 3rd turn. But haven't played them too much, so I think Sabine right now is probably the most consistent and really fast aggro deck. Alright, that was it for this one, a little bit of a longer episode. Let me know if you want to see some Palpatine gameplay, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.